What is up, guys? Welcome back to New Gen Plus. We've all seen the viral videos, but have you ever played the physics engine behind the madness? Today, we're diving into Saw Studios' Karen, a game that turns Suburban Tantrums into a high-octane masterclass in systemic destruction. From the bone-shattering mega Yelp to the physics-defying coupon Cyclone, we're breaking down why this rage sim is more than just a meme. It's a chaotic technical achievement. And trust me, you won't believe how the Florida Man finale changes everything. Let's get into it. Kicking off our list at number 15, we have to look at the beating heart of Saw Studios' upcoming viral rage sim, Karen. While the absurd premise gets all the laughs, the game is actually built on a surprisingly robust physics engine that drives what is known as chaos chemistry. Instead of relying on pre-baked animations to break props, the game calculates systemic destruction based on the unique material properties of every object in the mall. Everything from tiny perfume bottles to full-size retail displays reacts dynamically to force and impact. If you shove a kiosk into a glass display case, you're not just breaking glass. The engine calculates the shatter physics and the trajectory of mannequins being sent flying, which can then trigger secondary explosions or malfunctions if they smash into a mall electrical system or a water fountain. What makes this sandbox so highly anticipated is how this chain reaction physics system ties into your escalation mechanics. As you perform entitled actions like yelling, slapping, and shoving, your baseline rage level climbs and your physical capabilities grow. A minor tantrum at a makeup counter quickly snowballs into a massive, entirely unscripted disaster. The gaming community is already praising this as a therapeutic comedy hit because it gives us the absolute freedom to test the limits of these physics-driven chain reactions, turning everyday retail frustration into a hilarious, highly reactive sandbox. Coming in at number 14, we have the Cringe Tantrums. What makes this game so wild isn't just the physical destruction, it's the underlying emotional AI system. When you start throwing a fit, shoving display racks, wrecking end caps, or knocking over a lit candle that accidentally torches the home goods aisle, you aren't just breaking things. You're actively manipulating the people around you. The game tracks your chaotic inputs and forces the NPC store employees into escalating panic states. At first, the retail workers might just brush off your behavior with mild annoyance. But as your tantrums get progressively worse and the physics chain reactions multiply, that AI dynamically shifts into active fear and defensive routines. You are quite literally bullying the simulation into a breakdown. Players testing the beta are already praising how strangely cathartic this feels. It is a highly self-aware, satirical digital sandbox that lets you act out the absolute worst retail nightmares with zero real-world consequences, turning a boring big box store into a disaster zone driven entirely by your bad behavior. Coming in at number 13, we have the undisputed centerpiece of your offensive toolkit, the Mega Yelp. If you're going to build an entire game around the "I want to speak to the manager" trope, you need a way to actually enforce those demands. That is where this signature piece of the Karen Senile comes into play. The Mega Yelp is exactly what it sounds like, a concussive, sonic-based shout that acts as your primary crowd control mechanic. When you let this loose, the effects are completely over the top. It violently blasts NPCs backward and instantly shatters any glass displays within your radius. The game's satirical marketing even brags that the sheer force of the shout makes terrified bystanders wet their pants. But it is not just a basic stun ability. This concussive wave is the spark that ignites the game's wild physics engine. You use the Mega Yelp to initiate massive chain reactions, knocking over heavy mall kiosks, toppling rows of mannequins, and setting off explosive sequences across a shopping center. Players are already eating this up online, praising the game as a hilarious slapstick sandbox that delivers pure catharsis. The community loves how it takes a ridiculous internet meme and translates it into a genuinely satisfying physics-driven gameplay loop where weaponized complaining is your best tactical advantage. Down at number 12, let us look at the absolute pinnacle of the Karen Senile. It is called the Coupon Cyclone. This ultimate ability is exactly what it sounds like, letting you transform into a literal spinning storm of expired savings and paper cuts. But it is not just a visual gag. The Coupon Cyclone is a massive, localized physics vortex that feeds directly into the game's chaos chemistry system. Activating this whirlwind in the middle of a crowded store turns a mundane retail dispute into over-the-top slapstick comedy. You're actively shredding store inventory, sending mannequins flying across the room, and triggering massive escalating chain reactions that force the mall environment to learn, adapt, and fight back. Because the game is currently coming soon, the community is already buzzing about the sheer emergent potential here. Players are eager to see exactly how much systemic destruction they can cause with a single activation before mall security or management intervenes. It is the perfect hyperbolic tool for a rage simulator, fully embracing this satirical idea of letting you be the absolute worst person on earth for pure comedic catharsis. Moving down to number 11, let's look at the actual campaign loop holding all this chaos together, the 6-day boss structure. Karen doesn't just drop you into a sandbox and say, go. It escalates your behavior across 6 distinct days. You start with minor inconveniences during a shift at a local shopping mall and gradually work your way up to high-end boutiques and full-blown crises at HOA meetings. At the end of every single day, you face the ultimate adversary, the manager, but these aren't traditional combat encounters. Instead, they are high-stakes puzzles of dialogue, combat, and physics-based meltdowns. Every manager is equipped with a unique patience meter and a trigger threshold. Your objective is to break them down into a compliant state, and the tactics required change every shift. Some managers might cave immediately to public shaming, while others demand that you escalate to full-blown legal threats. Where this structure really shines and where players are having an absolute field day is how you combine these thresholds with the game's physics. People are using mundane objects like shopping carts and spilled coffee cups to set up absurd Rube Goldberg-style chain reactions, physically blocking exits or trapping managers in corners to force a resolution. It isn't without its critics, though. There's a pretty vocal debate in the community right now about the difficulty spike late in the game. The Day 6 corporate boss fight can feel frustratingly RNG heavy, relying a bit too much on luck. But then again, a lot of fans argue that's exactly the point, praising it as a brilliant satire of how impossible it actually is to get a straight answer out of corporate bureaucracy. Either way, the day-by-day escalation keeps the campaign loop incredibly engaging. Coming in at number 10, we have the ultimate clash of internet titans. Every unstoppable force eventually meets an immovable object, and in Saw Studios' campaign, that object wears jorts and wrestles alligators. I'm talking about the Florida Man boss encounter. This isn't just a gimmick to cap off your rampage against mall management. It is a brilliant reflection of your own destructive capabilities. Throughout the game, you have been the one causing the mess, but Florida Man throws that chaotic energy right back in your face. The physics engine goes into absolute overdrive here. Thanks to the game's underlying chaos chemistry, this fight quickly devolves into a massive chain reaction of shattered glass, collapsing structures, and exploding mall fountains. You aren't just fighting an enemy, you are frantically trying to manage a rapidly decaying environment before the physics engine turns you into collateral damage. The community response to this encounter has been incredibly enthusiastic, and honestly, it is easy to see why. Players have joked that pairing Karen and Florida Man in the same universe is basically the internet culture version of the Avengers. It perfectly nails that self-aware tone while simultaneously weaponizing the game's absolute unpredictability. Florida Man doesn't follow standard boss patterns, meaning you have to use the very environmental destruction you have been perfecting just to survive his onslaught. Coming in at number 9, let's talk about how you actually stay alive in a game like this. Forget your standard health points. In Karen, your primary health bar is the ego meter. Saw Studios completely gamified the psychology of a retail nightmare. Your ego acts as a literal shield of pure entitlement. As long as you maintain that sky-high sense of self-importance, your character keeps standing, brushing off logic and store policies like they are nothing. But if that meter drops and you're forced to experience a moment of actual humility, your character will literally collapse under the weight of self-awareness. You survive on sheer audacity. The community is already praising this as a genuinely clever thematic mechanic. It elevates the game from a simple destruction simulator into an actual layer of strategic resource management. You have to actively balance your entitlement to keep the customer service rampage going. It also functions as one half of a dual system design working in tandem with your mounting environmental frustrations, which we are going to break down next. But the core takeaway here is that your gameplay loop and very survival are entirely dependent on never ever admitting you might be wrong. Coming in at number 8 is the rage meter. This is the core mechanic that actively rewards you for fully embracing the entitled customer persona. In this upcoming sandbox, your frustration is literally gamified. The meter fills up whenever you're subjected to specific environmental stressors like agonizingly slow service or having to listen to generic modern store music on a loop. Once that gauge maxes out, you do not just complain, you go full Godzilla. Triggering the filled rage meter grants temporary invincibility and massively amps up your destructive power. This is where the absurdist physics engine really shines. Under the effects of the rage meter, a simple shove of a display kiosk suddenly turns into a massive store-wide structural collapse. The gaming community is already eating this up, comparing the vibe to titles like Goat Simulator and Untitled Goose Game. Players are pointing out the pure cathartic joy of the chain reaction system and the heavy meme potential it brings to the table. It takes the absolute cringe of a real-life public meltdown and turns it into a highly volatile, physics-driven weapon. Coming in at number 7 is the viral capture mechanic. In Karen and Outrage Simulator, causing a scene is not just about breaking physics, it is about drawing an audience. As you smash retail shelves or launch yourself at innocent shoppers, nearby NPCs will actually whip out their smartphones to record your meltdown. This feeds directly into your viral status, a dynamic escalation system that gamifies the real-world consequence of internet infamy. The longer you stay in frame and the more chaos you cause on camera, the faster your viral meter climbs. The gaming community absolutely loves this implementation. Players have praised it as a brilliant, satirical take on bad behavior going viral. Instead of just letting you loose in a mindless destruction sandbox, the game forces a genuine risk and reward strategy. You're constantly playing a game of cat and mouse, balancing the urge to cause maximum property damage with the need to break line of sight and avoid those camera lenses. Push that virality to a critical threshold, and your public freakout instantly transforms into a high-stakes evasion challenge, drawing the attention of highly aggressive store security. Coming in at number 6, we have the game's ultimate reality check, the security taser response. Mall cops in Saw Studios' sim don't just blindly attack. They actually operate on a surprisingly strict escalation matrix. Depending on your current viral fame and how much property you've wrecked, the AI state machine shifts your status from a simple nuisance to a disturbance before finally branding you an active threat. Once you cross that destruction threshold and a guard gets within proximity, out comes the taser. This is where the physics engine really flexes its muscles. Taking 50,000 volts instantly overrides whatever chaotic animation you're locked into, dropping your character into a heavy, momentum-driven ragdoll state that reacts flawlessly to whatever you crash into. There has been some debate on games forums about this mechanic. Some players feel the security AI is a little too aggressive, arguing the taser acts as an unfair punishment just for playing the game. But honestly, the community quickly figured out how to turn this consequence into a weapon. Because the taser relies on strict proximity triggers and physical projectiles, clever players have learned to manipulate this input-output loop. You can actively bait a charging guard, dodge at the last possible second, and trick them into accidentally tasing innocent bystanders or physics-enabled mall props. It completely flips the script, turning a standard game-over mechanic into an engine for pure, unscripted slapstick. Hitting the number 5 spot on our countdown, we have to talk about the retail worker AI. When you're unleashing absolute chaos, the NPCs do not just stand around waiting to be yelled at. The developers built a surprisingly complex pathfinding and interaction logic for the store employees. They dynamically react to your presence by attempting to hide, call for help, or even actively defend their kiosks. What makes this work so well is the underlying collision stack logic. If you interrupt a worker during the checkout process or block their path to the break room, the AI registers that blockage and triggers a panic or defensive response. It turns every shift manager into a moving target with actual self-preservation instincts. The community has developed a real love-hate relationship with these mechanics, though. On the positive side, players are constantly clipping the hilarious, janky physics moments that happen when an overwhelmed retail worker gets stuck tumbling over a counter. It is pure social media gold. But there's also some valid frustration regarding pathing efficiency. Sometimes the AI loops helplessly when it gets cornered, ignoring clear escape routes and creating rage-inducing bottlenecks in the aisles instead of mounting a proper defense. Despite those occasional pathing hiccups, when the system works, hunting down a terrified employee through a maze of shopping carts feels incredibly dynamic. Coming in at number 4, let's talk about how this game actually handles character progression. You aren't grinding for standard XP in Karen. Instead, Saw Studios introduces the Entitlement skill tree. You earn entitlement points, or EP, by doing exactly what you would expect, causing a scene, making NPCs cry, successfully demanding refunds, and getting staff fired. You take those hard-earned points and dump them into a skill tree to unlock some genuinely hilarious character upgrades. You can equip the classic "Can I speak to the manager" asymmetrical bob haircut, which is actually aerodynamically designed to boost your movement speed. You can also unlock the oversized sunglasses of judgment to literally see disrespect through walls, or equip the HOA rulebook to use as a blunt force weapon. This entire progression system ties directly into the game's aggression meter. This lets you toggle your approach on the fly, switching between a simmering passive-aggressive mode of subtle eye rolls or flipping the switch into full Karen mode for immediate, high-volume manager demands. Players are already calling this a social meltdown simulator. It totally nails that self-aware, cartoonish absurdity you would find in Goat Simulator or Untitled Goose Game. and the community has completely embraced the satirical E for entitled vibe. The best part is that every single unlock on this tree feels purpose-built to fuel the physics engine and create those chaotic, highly clippable moments that are guaranteed to flood your social media feeds. Down to number 3, let's look at the actual sandbox you will be tearing apart, environmental destruction. In Karen, the developers at Saw Studios didn't just make a static shopping center, they built a fully destructible litter box where almost every object can be broken, ignited, or short-circuited. The destruction here isn't just cosmetic. Knocking over a single kiosk or display stand kicks off a massive chain reaction system. We are talking shattering glass, exploding fountains, and physics-based events that cascade until entire store sections physically collapse in real time. As your capabilities grow alongside your tantrums, your capacity for structural carnage scales right up with it. The gaming community is already eating this up, frequently comparing the chaotic playground potential to games like Untitled Goose Game or Goat Simulator, but with a much heavier focus on actual physics simulation. People are incredibly hyped to see how this chain reaction sandbox actually feels to play once the game finally drops. Turning retail frustration into outrageous mayhem is a hilarious satirical concept, but backing it up with a systemic environment where your tantrums can literally bring the roof down is what makes this upcoming release so technically impressive. Coming in at number 2, we have to talk about your primary weapon. In Karen, your fists take a backseat to your mouth thanks to a literal dialogue combat system. Saw Studios built this with 3 escalating tiers of hostility, passive-aggressive, full Karen, and nuclear. But the real tactical meat is in the starter pack, the passive-aggressive mode. This isn't just about picking a mean dialogue option. It is a slow burn energy mechanic tied to subtle character animations like heavy sighs, dramatic eye rolls, and incredibly sarcastic remarks about the store's service quality. The goal here is psychological warfare. You use these specific dialogue trees to chip away at an NPC's morale, making them increasingly uncomfortable without crossing the line and immediately triggering a security response. And this is where the game systems beautifully collide. When you successfully verbally badger a worker with passive-aggressive comments, they get flustered. They start making mistakes. You can literally talk someone into being so nervous they physically knock over a display, creating a chain reaction you can then exploit to open up entirely new gameplay paths. The community is absolutely eating this up, hailing the game as a massive comedy hit for how well it gamifies that uncomfortable real-world social phenomenon. There is a ridiculous amount of satisfaction in watching a meticulously crafted passive-aggressive dialogue choice somehow lead to an NPC fumbling so hard they accidentally set a store on fire or open a pathway to hell. It turns the simple act of complaining to the manager into a tactical, reality-bending weapon. And finally, taking our number 1 spot, we have the ultimate playground for all this madness, the Suburban Sprawl level design. Saw Studios has essentially built a sandbox of cultural absurdity. The mall functions as a massive systemic environment where absolutely everything is physics-enabled. We are talking about pretzel kiosks, seasonal displays, decorative fountains, and security stations, all waiting to be toppled. The brilliance here is the interconnected layout. It is explicitly designed to encourage you to push objects into one another, triggering massive, catastrophic chain reactions. It turns a simple retail dispute into a full-blown mall disaster, making the environment the perfect therapeutic and satirical outlet for all your worst impulses. Of course, the big concern floating around the community is longevity. A recurring critique of physics sandboxes is that they can quickly feel like glorified tech demos once the novelty of breaking things wears off. Will it get repetitive? That really comes down to the execution of the entitled to-do list and the hidden challenges scattered throughout the mall. If the objectives force us to creatively use this sprawling retail layout to solve problems rather than just blindly smashing it, Suburban Sprawl is going to offer an incredibly deep and satisfying gameplay loop. And that's our list for Karen, why this viral rage sim is actually a masterclass in physics. Did we capture the most frustrating moments? What did we miss? Let us know in the comments and make sure you hit that like button and subscribe if you want more deep dives into the games that break our brains. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. Here are some more videos of ours you can watch